Hey Porch, it's Val. It's time for another virtual Porch. So here in the month of May, I talked about this last week, we are in a series called Rebuild. You know, just that idea of like standing on the ashes of something and declaring like, we will rebuild, and then doing the hard work to rebuild right. Not just saying, oh, we're going to put everything back together exactly the way it was, but actually evaluating our lives as it starts to kind of like resurrect in this time and go back to normal. So you are at truly week one of Rebuild. There are three different things that we're going to talk about, three different areas that we are going to be intentional about rebuilding in our lives as we kind of re-enter. And the first one we're going to talk about today is our worldview. Next week, we're going to talk about friends. The week after that, we're going to talk about priorities. But today is worldview. Now, worldview, of course, is one of those like kind of self-explained words. You know, it's the way and the lens in which we process and see the world around us. And maybe many of you, you know, probably even the reason you found this channel is because you're somehow connected with Porch, or you go to church or something like that. So many of you would probably say, oh, your worldview is that you have some kind of like belief in God. You know, maybe you've grown up in the church, maybe you just kind of like have the sense that there's something more. But you might say like, yeah, before all this happened, like, oh yeah, no, I totally believe in God. But as this crisis has hit really our whole world, maybe some of that has been shaken in you a little bit. I was in high school, or I was in 8th grade, actually, when September 11th happened. And that actually was really shaking for me. I don't think I ever expressed that to anybody. I don't think I ever told an adult or a friend or anything just how shaking that was, and the types of things that I was thinking about and questions that I had never asked before, that I was asking as I laid in bed at night and as I thought about the state of our world. And maybe that's where some of you are at right now. Maybe you're starting to ask questions like I was about life and about death, about security, about insecurity. Maybe those things are going through your head. Fear that you've never really experienced before. That's a really valid thing to be asking those questions. And maybe you've been scared as those questions have come up in you and you don't know what to do with them. And I want to tell you, don't push those down. Don't push those questions down. Let them bubble up. Take them seriously. Write them down. Make a list. Don't shove them down. That's your worldview that's being rattled. Let's rebuild it. Let's work on the foundation of how we process all of life around us. Those questions are good. Actually, not too long ago, I think it was probably like 2 weeks ago now, I had a student text me and just say, hey, I've got all kinds of questions. And they're questions that like, I don't know if a Christian or someone who believes in God should really be asking. Like, can I have an off the record conversation with you? And can you help me answer some of my questions? And I was like, yes, of course, please call me. And I ended up taking my phone. I walked around the neighborhood, and her and I had a long conversation, probably over an hour, just talking about these serious questions and how they relate to faith in Jesus, and some of the things that we know for sure and some of the things that are a mystery. And it was this awesome conversation. So I am extending that invitation to you guys. If you have those questions, I'll talk to any of you. Let's set up a time. Write those questions down. Let's make a time and let's start going through some of those questions so that you can do that work of rebuilding. Just on that note, you can text me if you want. If you don't have my cell phone number or my email, put it in the direct messages and someone will get back to you, or and let you know how to get a hold of me or another member of the Porch team, so that we can start going through those questions. I think it would be awesome. I think it'd be so cool if we did that together. Also, I just wanted to share with you, in that time in my life that I was questioning a lot of things, and just who God is and why is there pain and all of those things, there were two main things that were really helpful for me, and I wanted to share them with you too. The first one is from 1 Corinthians 4:14 33. I wrote them down and I still can't read it right. 1 Corinthians 14:33, and it says this, that God is not a God of confusion, but a God of peace. And that gave me so much comfort. That sometimes confusion can like push us to asking hard questions and seeking answers, and that's great. But to stay and live in confusion is not of God. And he tells us that he is not a God of confusion, but he is a God of peace. And I love that. So if you are confused, keep pushing, keep seeking God, because God is a God of peace. And the second one is this. It's John 10:27 through 29. You can look it up. I'll let you pause. John 10:27 through 29. Um, but what is said in that passage is Jesus speaking. And he says, I know my sheep. We're the sheep. I know my sheep, and my sheep know me. Yes, we do. And no one can snatch them out of my hand. Nobody can grab them out. There is no question, there's no situation, there is no hardship that can shake you from the hands of God if you are a follower of Jesus. So don't be afraid of those hard questions. Sometimes we're afraid to ask hard questions because we don't know what the answer is going to be and if we're going to like it very much. Don't be afraid. Nothing can snatch you out of God's hand. Nothing. So ask away, ask your hard questions, rebuild whatever piece of your worldview feels shaken. Don't be afraid to ask the hard questions and reach out with them. I would love if my week was full just talking to students about Jesus and answering hard questions as best we can and seeking God together. So reach out, let's rebuild. We get to do it together, and it's so cool that we're in a community where we can do that. So there you go. That's week 1. Come back next week for week 2 of Rebuild. Bye, everyone.